control!
I've got this!
When names were read at the morning briefings, hers was spoken quickly, as if it didn't matter. A formality. When flight assignments were handed out, she was always the one on the margin, sitting in the shadows, listening to orders meant for others. The others wore medals. The others carried stories. She carried silence. Her uniform was the same dark green as theirs, her insignia stitched in place, but it never drew attention. If you passed her in the hallway, you might not even remember her face 5 minutes later. She was trained, yes. She had logged the hours in simulators. She knew the checklists. She had studied emergency procedures until they became muscle memory. But the truth? No one really believed she would ever use them. When the B-2 Spirit thundered down the runway, cloaked in its sharp, black silhouette, she wasn't in the cockpit. She was strapped into the seat behind. But their tone cut sharper than any insult. You're lucky. You just get to sit back and watch. Hey, don't mess it up. You might actually have to touch the stick one day. Relax. It's not like you'll ever have to fly for real. She smiled every time, nodded, let the words pass. But deep inside, a part of her cracked a little more each day. And sometimes, in those moments when she was alone in her quarters, she would stare at her reflection in the mirror and ask herself a question she couldn't silence. Am I really needed? Or am I just here to fill space? Doubt became her shadow. It followed her into training, into briefings, into the long hours of waiting. The instructors ticked the boxes beside her name. Competent, steady, no complaints. But never exceptional, never essential. Still, she stayed, because leaving would mean proving everyone right, that she was just a shadow, and something in her refused to let go. She remembered her father's words, spoken years ago, when she first said she wanted to fly. The sky doesn't care about rank. The sky only answers to those who dare. And so she waited. She trained. She listened to orders meant for others. She took notes, even when no one expected her to. She memorized systems manuals long after the rest of the crew went to bed. Yet every time the Spirit rose into the sky without her at the front, she felt it, like watching a destiny she wasn't allowed to claim. That was her life. The forgotten pilot. The one on the margin. The one everyone ignored. But fate is strange. It doesn't follow rank. It doesn't wait for permission. Sometimes, fate crashes straight into the person no one believes in. And when it does, you find out who they really are. No one on that base could have imagined what was coming. No one could have predicted that one of the most advanced bombers in the world would falter, gasp, and fall apart in midair. And no one, not a single soul, thought the hand that would rise to seize the controls would be hers. The pilot no one remembered, the name they barely spoke, the backup who was about to step out of the shadows. And in that moment, when the world's deadliest machine began to die, she would discover the truth her father whispered years ago. The sky doesn't care about rank. The sky doesn't care about glory. The sky answers only to those who dare. And she would dare when no one else could. The B-2 Spirit rose into the morning sky with the grace of a phantom. From the ground, it was a silhouette of power, sleek, black, and silent. A predator cloaked in steel. Inside, the crew moved through routines they could perform half asleep. Checklists, system scans, weapon locks, all green. The commander nodded, his voice steady through the headset. The commander squinted, tapped the glass. The light steadied, then vanished. He dismissed it with a mutter. Glitch. But legends don't glitch. They break. And when they break, they do it all at once. 30 minutes into the flight, the alarms began. Not one, not two. A cascade. Hydraulic pressure, dropping. Stability control, offline. Electrical surge, detected. Navigation compromised. The calm hum of the cockpit transformed into a storm of red lights and sirens. The commander barked orders. The co-pilot scrambled. Fingers flipped switches, reset systems. Because she knew these systems. She had studied every failure scenario the manuals buried in the back pages. She had run every impossible drill alone in simulators no one monitored. She had prepared, not because she expected this moment, but because no one else had. Her hand trembled as she reached forward. Her fingers hovered over the stick. The commander snapped his head toward her, fury flashing in his eyes. "What are you doing?" But she didn't answer. She couldn't, because if she spoke, doubt might follow. And there was no room for doubt. Not here. Not now. Her hand closed on the control. And for the first time in her life, the B-2 spirit belonged to her. The bomber lurched violently. The crew shouted, "She's insane. She'll kill us all." But in the chaos, her eyes burned steady. Every sound, every alarm, every scream faded to background noise. All she saw were numbers. Altitude. Airspeed. Not yet, but recognition. Because for the first time since the nightmare began, the bomber wasn't falling blindly. It was fighting, and she was the one making it fight. Seconds bled away. 7 minutes. 6. Her arms ached. Sweat poured down her spine. Her teeth clenched as the stick vibrated violently under her grip. Every adjustment tore through her muscles like fire. But she refused to let go. She remembered the words her father once told her. The sky doesn't care about rank. The sky only answers to those who dare. And now, here she was, daring when no one else could. The commander sat frozen beside her, his authority shattered. The crew muttered in disbelief, their training useless in the face of her defiance. Below, the base prepared for impact. Evacuation alarms hung. Soldiers scrambled from barracks. Medics readied stretchers. No one expected survival. But high above, inside the coffin of steel and shadow, the forgotten pilot fought. The bomber bucked again, engines howling. The nose pitched toward Earth. She pulled harder, veins straining in her arms. The spirit resisted like a beast unwilling to be tamed. Come on, she whispered through gritted teeth. Not to herself, not to the crew, to the machine, to the spirit itself. And then, for a moment, it responded. The shuddering slowed. The nose lifted. Altitude steadied. The co-pilot gasped. She's holding it. The commander's lips parted, words caught in his throat. He wanted to stop her, to reclaim control. But deep down he knew he couldn't. He had already failed. 5 minutes left. Every second was a war. Every correction a knife's edge. But with each one, the spirit obeyed her more. The alarm still screamed, but beneath the noise there was rhythm. A fragile balance. Her knuckles turned white. Her body shook, but her eyes never wavered. Because she knew something the others had forgotten. Machines may be built of steel, wires, and fire, but they still respond to belief, to the will of the one who dares. And in that cockpit, she had never been given the chance to lead. But now, whether she wanted it or not, history had placed everything in her hands. And as the B-2 spirit trembled on the edge of death, one truth rang clear. The forgotten pilot was no longer forgotten. She was the only hope left. The cockpit was no longer a place of order. It was a storm. Metal screamed under invisible pressure. Alarms wailed in uneven bursts, and every red light that could burn was burning. Inside that steel womb, the crew of the B-2 Spirit was unraveling. Colonel Harker, the mission commander, had sweat dripping into his eyes, blinding him as much as the flashing error codes on his screen. He barked orders, half commands, half prayers, but the systems weren't listening. His words carried no authority anymore. The aircraft, the machine they trusted, had turned deaf. Hydraulics are gone. Damn it, gone, one voice shouted through the headset. Navigation's spinning blind, another replied, panic cracking every syllable. We've lost stabilizers on the left wing. We're rolling. The backup pilot sat there, strapped to her seat, her hands trembling just inches from the controls. She wasn't supposed to be here for this. She was trained to shadow, to wait, to obey. The silent shadow behind the decorated aces. Her name didn't echo in briefing rooms. It wasn't carved into plaques or repeated in speeches. She was the backup, a word that sounded safe, but meant invisible. Now, that invisibility wrapped around her like a shroud. The cockpit reeked of sweat and ozone. Every second dragged heavier, pressing on the lungs, thickening the silence between alarm shrieks. Panic had no shape but it filled the air like smoke, choking reason. Colonel Harker slammed a fist against the console. "We're not stabilizing." "Override," doesn't respond. The co-pilot beside him, voice shaking, muttered, "It's not supposed to fail like this. It can't all fail." But it had, system by system, like organs shutting down in a body too far gone. For a fleeting instant, everyone in that cockpit believed the Spirit had already chosen its grave. The backup pilot closed her eyes, and in the dark, on the instrument panel, the numbers spiraled down. Altitude bleeding fast. Fuel dispersing in wild, uneven bursts. They had 8 minutes. 8 minutes before the world outside became fire. The crew didn't notice her at first. They were too deep in their own fear. But the Spirit noticed. The machine shuddered, not in collapse, but in resistance, as if surprised someone still believed it could fight. Colonel Harker snapped his head toward her. "What the hell are you doing?" he roared. She didn't answer, because there was no time for explanations. Every second she hesitated, the ground drew closer. Every second she doubted, another life slipped further from salvation. She gritted her teeth, and with steady hands began to do the unthinkable. Rebuild control inside the very heart of chaos. And though fear still clawed at her chest, though sweat blurred her eyes, though her name had never been worth remembering in their world, in that moment, the Spirit remembered her, because she was the only one still fighting. The cockpit remained chaotic, but within that chaos a spark had ignited. The cockpit was chaos. Red lights pulsed like the heartbeat of a dying beast, each alarm shrieking its own funeral hymn. Hydraulic pressure gone. Navigation blind. Power distribution, flickering in and out like the last breath of a candle in the wind. For a moment, silence fell inside her headset, a silence more terrifying than the noise. The commander's voice, usually sharp, clipped, unshakable, was breaking. "We've lost it. Nothing's responding." His words hung in the stale, recycled air. The kind of words no B-2 pilot ever expected to say. And then her hand moved, not in hesitation, not in permission. It was defiance. The kind of defiance that comes from someone who has spent a lifetime being told they were not enough. Her fingers wrapped around the controls, steady but burning with urgency. The commander turned, disbelief etched into his face. "What the hell are you doing?" he barked. But she didn't flinch, because she saw it. The machine wasn't gone yet. Beneath the failing screens, beneath the screaming alarms, the Spirit was still alive, barely. And she refused to let it die. Her training wasn't glamorous. She hadn't been forged in combat glory. She had been drilled in the boring, forgotten redundancies, systems no one thought they'd ever need. Fail-safes hidden beneath fail-safes. Procedures that lived in the dusty corners of manuals most commanders never opened. But she knew them. She had studied them. She had memorized them. And now, when every decorated ace froze in terror, those forgotten pages were her lifeline. Her voice cut through the cockpit, low but firm. Switch to manual auxiliary routing. Now, the commander blinked. "That won't. It will. Do it." Something in her tone stopped him. Maybe it was the fire in her eyes. Maybe it was the fact that no one else had a plan. Slowly, reluctantly, his hand moved to the switches she called out. The jet groaned. The alarms stuttered. A flicker of power returned to one screen, just enough to show altitude. The Spirit was falling fast. Back at the base, ground control was a storm of panic. Controllers shouted over one another, voices cracking with desperation. "They're going down. We're losing them. Impact in 9 minutes." And then her voice came over the comms. Calm, clear, unshaken. Spirit 05, backup pilot taking control. Initiating emergency reroute sequence. There was silence on the line. The colonel in charge froze. The backup pilot? He hadn't even remembered her name. For years, she had been invisible, a name on a roster, a body in a chair, someone they never expected to speak. Minutes bled away like sand through broken fingers. 8, 7, 6. The Spirit shuddered, fighting against gravity. Her hands moved like they were born to the controls, quick, precise, merciless. Disable auto-stabilizers before they kill what's left of control. Rely on instinct, on feel, not on screens that lie. The commander's breathing was ragged beside her. She wasn't a backup. She was the pilot. Ground control broke the silence again. Spirit 05, you have no clearance to override. Repeat, no clearance. Await further instruction. She ignored them, because clearance didn't matter to a machine falling from the sky. Rules didn't matter to death racing at you at 500 knots. Her jaw tightened. You want me to wait? She muttered under her breath. Then you can watch us burn. Her hands kept moving. Systems that had been dead a moment ago flickered with new life. Not stable, not strong, but breathing. She was stitching a corpse together with threads of lightning and willpower. 5 minutes. The B-2 dropped through clouds, the ground rushing closer. Town lights glimmered faintly below. If they lost it here, if the spirit exploded, an entire community would be swallowed in fire. Her heart hammered, but her voice never shook. Trim set. Left controls surface responsive. Feed auxiliary power into stabilizers. The commander echoed the commands, his voice steadier now, following her lead. For the first time, he wasn't the one giving orders. For the first time, he was trusting her. 3 minutes. The spirit leveled slightly, still bleeding altitude, but slower. Hope cracked through the despair. She didn't let herself breathe it in. Not yet. Every second mattered. Every muscle screamed under the tension of holding a jet that wanted to die. Sweat rolled down her temple, stinging her eyes. And still, her hands never left the controls. 2 minutes. Ground control's voice came again, desperate now. Backup pilot, this is command. If you can't stabilize, divert to crash zone echo. Do you copy? She knew what that meant. It wasn't about saving them. It was about protecting the base. Protecting their assets. To them, she was expendable. Her lips curled in defiance. Negative command. We're bringing her home. The silence that followed was deafening. No one argued. No one dared. Because for the first time, they believed her. 1 minute. The runway lights were in sight. Tiny veins of gold against the black earth. So close. Too close. The spirit screamed as its battered systems fought against physics. Panels rattled. Metal groaned. It wasn't flying. It was surviving moment by moment under the grip of a woman no one believed in. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Not to the crew. Not to ground control. But to the spirit itself. Come on, girl. Just a little longer. Just one more breath. Seconds. The landing gear struggled. Half deployed. Warning lights flaring again. The commander cursed, but she didn't hesitate. Hold her steady. Let her slide if she has to. We're not crashing today. And then, impact. The spirit hit the runway hard. Metal screeched against asphalt. Sparks erupting like fireworks in the night. The jet skidded, shuddered, and for one horrifying moment, it felt like she would flip. Her grip tightened. Her body leaned with the machine, coaxing it, pleading with it, commanding it. Stay with me. The spirit obeyed. The skid slowed. The sparks died. And finally, silence. A silence so heavy it felt like the world had stopped breathing. And she had done it. Not as a backup, not as an afterthought, but as the pilot who refused to let the spirit die. But as the floodlights swarmed the runway, as emergency crews raced toward them, she knew the fight wasn't over. Because saving the B-2 was only half the battle. The other half was proving to a world that never saw her, that she belonged here, that she always had. And deep down, she knew the spirit itself would remember. The machine everyone feared. The machine everyone revered. It had been dying, and she was the one who pulled it back from the grave. The cockpit was shaking. Warning lights flared across the instrument panel. Every sound inside the B-2 spirit felt amplified. The groan of stressed metal, the hum of dying circuits, the sharp buzz of alarms screaming for attention. 8 minutes. That was all the time left. Not 8 minutes until landing. Not 8 minutes until safety. 8 minutes until the bomber, her bomber, would no longer be in the sky. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to be the one holding the stick of the world's most secret aircraft. staring into the abyss of failure. She was the backup pilot, the spare, the one no one ever expected to matter. But in war, fate does not ask permission. It simply calls your name. Her captain lay slumped beside her, unconscious, his mask fogged with shallow breaths. He had fought to keep control and lost. The bomber, once steady as stone, now felt alive with chaos. Every movement unpredictable. She tightened her grip. Her fingers trembled. She wanted to freeze, to scream, to vanish into nothingness. But 8 minutes demanded something else. 8 minutes demanded courage. The first voice in her headset was cold, sharp. Spirit 2-1, this is command. Your systems are failing. Abort the mission. Do you copy? Her lips parted, but no words came out. Abort. Eject. Survive. That was the order. But ejecting meant losing the bomber. And losing the bomber meant losing everything it carried, everything it protected. She thought of the base below, the men and women who trusted the Spirit to shield them. She thought of the mission, the months of preparation, the lives tied to the outcome of this single night. If she left now, if she saved herself, what would they lose? Her breath shivered. Then, slowly she answered, "Negative, command. I'm staying with her." The next silence on the radio was heavier than any noise. She had defied the order. She had chosen the impossible path. And now, it was her fight alone. Minute 1, the bomber lurched downward, slipping into an uncontrolled descent. She yanked the stick back, muscles straining, heart pounding. The nose lifted but barely. She could feel the machine resisting, like a wounded beast fighting against her grip. Minute 2, smoke coiled from the console. One engine coughed, the vibration spreading through the fuselage. She silenced the alarm with a trembling hand, knowing the warning didn't vanish. The danger only grew. Minute 3, her headset crackled again. Another voice, steadier this time. "Listen to me. You have to keep her stable. The Spirit can glide if you trust her shape. Don't fight her, guide her." She didn't even know who the voice belonged to. Ground control? Another pilot? Or was it just her own mind, breaking into fragments of memory and training? But she listened. She loosened her grip, guided instead of forced. The wings leveled. The bomber steadied for a moment. Minute 4. The horizon tilted once more. Clouds rushed past, darker now, lightning cutting through the sky. She squinted through the storm, searching for a break, a way out. But there was no clear path. Only the storm and the enemy of time. Her chest ached. She thought of the years she spent waiting, always waiting, in silence, unnoticed, forgotten. She thought of the people who had called her nothing more than a seat warmer, a backup. She whispered to herself through gritted teeth, "I was made for this." Minute 5. A new alarm screamed, fuel pressure collapsing. If she lost it now, the engines would flame out completely. The Spirit would become nothing more than a shadow falling from the sky. Her hands flew across the controls, rerouting what power she could, patching life into dying circuits. Sparks snapped at her fingertips. The acrid smell of burning wires filled her lungs. But the gauges steadied just enough. The bomber lived. For now. Minute 6. She caught sight of the runway, faint, distant, almost unreachable. Her heart leapt, then sank. At this speed, with this weight, with these wounds, could she even land? She didn't know. But she knew one thing. She had no choice. Her voice shook as she radioed in. "This is Spirit 2-1. Attempting emergency landing. 8 minutes will become 0. Minute 7. The final descent. The bomber screamed against gravity, metal shrieking as it fought to stay whole. She lined up with the runway, every nerve in her body burning. Her arms locked, her breath shallow. The wheels touched, too hard. The entire frame jolted. For a heartbeat. She thought it would break apart, scatter itself in fire and ruin. But it held. It skidded, sparks flying, brakes shrieking. Her teeth rattled, her vision blurred. And then silence. The bomber came to a halt. Minute 8. The world stopped. She sat frozen in her seat, hands still locked on the controls, chest heaving. Every muscle ached. Her eyes stung with sweat and tears. Slowly, she turned her head. The captain still breathed. alive. The bomber, broken but intact, still stood. And the base was safe. 8 minutes. 8 minutes that turned a backup into the pilot who saved everything. When the canopy opened, floodlights poured in. Shadows moved around her, medics, officers, ground crew. But their voices blurred, distant, drowned beneath the pounding of her heart. One figure stepped forward. An older commander, eyes stern, lips pressed tight. For a long moment, he simply looked at her. Then, slowly he saluted. She blinked, stunned, and as she raised a trembling hand to return it, she realized something she had never dared believe before. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer just a backup. She was the pilot who saved the Spirit. She was the pilot who saved them all. The forgotten seat, the ignored voice, the invisible name. But in the fire of those 8 minutes, she became something else. Not just a survivor, not just a pilot, a hero. They called her backup. They called her second choice. They called her the pilot you put in the seat, only when no one else is left. But in the darkest 8 minutes the base had ever faced, she became something more. Not a name on a roster, not a forgotten shadow in a flight suit. She became the only wall between life and devastation. And here's the truth we so often forget. History is not always shaped by the ones in the spotlight. Sometimes, it is written by those we never thought to look at. The quiet hands, the steady hearts, the ones who wait silently until the world demands everything of them. That's what she was. That's who she became. Not just a pilot, but the pilot who reminded us all of something bigger. Because courage does not ask if you're first or last. It only asks, will you rise? Her story is a mirror held up to us. How many times have we overlooked someone? How many times have we dismissed the quiet one in the room? The backup, the understudy, the one sitting in the corner, never realizing that one day it could be them who saves us all? And maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've been the one overlooked, the one underestimated, the one told you weren't ready, you weren't enough, you weren't it. If you've ever felt invisible, I want you to remember her. The backup pilot who everyone ignored until she wasn't. Until the sky itself needed her hands. Because hidden strength is still strength. Because silence does not mean weakness. Because the world has a way of discovering exactly what you're made of when you least expect it. So let her flight remind you, you matter. Even if no one is clapping. Even if no one is watching. The backup pilot saved her base in 8 minutes. But her story can live for generations if we tell it. So let's tell it together.